If you're a lawyer who works with tech companies or venture capitalists, then this video is for you. I'm going to teach you two core tech concepts today, and they're going to help you understand how your clients think so you can be a real strategic advisor. And I am not a lawyer, so I'm going to show you how your clients think, because I have been your client. So I used to run a technology startup where I had investors, so we had to go through the whole shareholder agreements, negotiations and all of that fun. I have also advised tech companies, and I've also advised various investors, angels, VCs, accelerators and so on. And also what you might find interesting is that I've actually also worked with big tech clients, and most relevantly for you, I have been the executive coach to a legal counsel at Google, and you can actually see the testimonial that she gave about working with tech for non-techies in the playlist section on this very channel. The reason why I made this video about tech concepts for lawyers is that I want you to be able to really understand your clients well, because essentially the business of law depends on your relationships. And obviously I'm not talking about the actual, statutes, they are what they are, but I'm talking about why does a client choose to work with you, or why does a client stay with you? It's because they feel understood. It's because you have a great relationship with them. And, like any relationship, we can forget commerce for a minute, but good relationships are good because people feel seen and people feel understood. So, as a lawyer, obviously your background is law. But if you want to work with tech clients, if you want to work with venture capitalists, and if you want to work with clients going through digital transformation, which is basically pretty much every major corporate these days, then understanding how they think, how they measure success is going to be really important. And so the first thing that I want you to know is that the opportunity before you is absolutely humongous right now. So I know that it feels like tech companies are everywhere, but actually tech companies only account for 10% of the Fortune 500 today, and I'm recording this at the beginning of 2024. So the opportunity to go up from 10% is really, really huge. And there's more. According to McKinsey, AI and digital transformation are at the top of the CEO's agenda in 2024. I think it's pretty obvious, and McKinsey probably got paid a lot of money to research this. But anyway, I think that's going to be the case definitely in 2024, 2025, and on and on and on. So basically, if you learn core concepts of tech, and I'm not talking about coding, literally I'm talking about some core concepts, so you can understand how tech clients, how venture capitalists, how companies going through digital transformation, how these companies think, then essentially you are learning a skill set that is going to keep on giving you exciting work and very lucrative work. And what's better than that? Intellectual stimulation and a ton of cash. I'll take that. So let's start with the biggest disconnect between how lawyers think and between how tech innovators think. And this disconnect comes from how both parties make their products. I'm going to show you this with a story, so something that I had to go through as a founder of a tech company. So when I was doing my MBA at Chicago Booth, many years ago now, I began working on an idea for a retail tech business. And then some of my classmates joined me and we started working together. We raised a small convertible note. It's kind of a type of fundraising. It was quite small. And then that allowed us to get going. And then, we had some success and basically needed to raise more cash. So I went out onto the fundraising trail. Not fun, that's another story. So I went out on the fundraising trail and I got about $500,000 in commitments, which is nice. And so we then needed to do a shareholders agreement. So in the US, often you wouldn't need a shareholders agreement at this stage. In the UK you did, but that's a whole other discussion. But essentially that was when I really delved into having to work on this shareholders agreement and basically had to be knee deep in lawyers. So I actually thought this was going to be really simple, because when you're fundraising as a founder, then the biggest issue is usually in the term sheet stage. The term sheet is basically when investors and founders negotiate for basically different rights. And I did that. I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then it came to the shareholders agreement. And basically, you know, as lawyers, you probably already know this, in the shareholders agreement, basically the investors' rights and the founders' rights are written out. And honestly, as we worked on our first ever version, it was like my descent into hell. There were comments going back and forth, and I know that for you lawyers this is totally normal, but you know, on the client side, I was not enjoying myself. So versions were multiplying. I remember Googling all sorts of legal terms, and at that point I was sustaining myself basically with sugar and Red Bull because only these really bad things were going to keep me going. And I found the experience so utterly draining. I actually remember having a therapy session about it. Honestly, so just so you know, this is what some of your clients are probably doing. Anyway, so a shareholders agreement, like any legal document, so this is just an example, like any legal document, a shareholders agreement is a very precisely written piece of prose where any room for interpretation could be really dangerous. And since millions could be at stake, or even billions could be at stake, I basically had to make sure that I understood every single point and every single subpoint in this really long document. I think it was about 40 pages. And so this was basically perfectionism on steroids. And it was literally the opposite of how I had become used to thinking as the leader of a tech company. And now let's put the shareholders agreement to one side and let's have a look at essentially what happens in a tech company. And let's think about just your phone, so your mobile phone. I'm sure you've got lots and lots of apps on your phone. You know how sometimes, without you doing anything, the logo of an app that you like is going to change because the company has decided to rebrand. Or maybe you open an app that you like and the screens are now different and basically your favorite functionalities are in a slightly different place. And sometimes that can be super annoying and sometimes they make it better, but essentially it changes without you doing anything. This is because basically behind this product that is sitting on your phone, there is a team of developers and designers and analysts and, you know, probably community managers all working together to come up with ideas for new features, to release them, to see whether you are using the new features, and if you are, to basically keep on promoting them, and if you're not, basically scrap them. And so what I have just showed you is that in the software world, and this is true if you're making apps, if you're making sites, if you're making algorithms, in the software world, there is a team working together to constantly come up with new ideas. That, you know, that's the hypothesis. It's like the scientific method. There is a hypothesis. Then they say, okay, well, we think this is going to work. Then they create that hypothesis. So maybe it's a new feature in an app. That's the easiest for me to explain to you. So maybe there's a new feature in an app. Maybe there's a new chat box. Or maybe they change the feature slightly, like the chat box window used to be pink and now they've turned it blue. Let's see what happens. So then they release a feature. You as the users, you don't get asked about that feature a lot of the time, you just get given it. And then sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this is brilliant, let me use that. Other times you're like, oh, this is really annoying, let me just not use this version, let me go back to the old one, or let me just kind of ignore this altogether. And then the app makers are sitting there and they're like, oh, okay, this didn't work, let's scrap that. And what I want you to see from this is that in the software innovation world, creating something that you think might work or might not work, that's kind of what we do. So we think in this iterative experimental way, and we're very aware that an idea that we have and that we release today might be scrapped in a month's time, and that is just the name of the game. Honestly, this is why I like it, because I think it's kind of interesting and exciting and you're always using your creativity. And so in software innovation, there is no such thing as a perfect finished product, because we're always coming up with new ideas and always testing them. Now let's go back to the legal world. Now, if somebody gave me, as a client, a sort of incomplete and half-baked shareholders agreement or, agreement, lease agreement, I would not be a happy bunny, right? Your clients demand perfection. So this is why lawyers are perfectionists, because the contracts that you are giving them, they have to be watertight. This is literally the opposite of how the tech world works. So this is why lawyers have to be perfectionists, because this is how you are trained to be. And this is also, as clients, this is what we expect of you. So thank you. But on the tech side, we cannot be perfectionists because there is no such thing as perfect, because the product is never complete. So the app, the algorithm, it's released, we see how people use it, and then we release a new version. So you are watching this after ChatGPT has been out for a while, so there was ChatGPT 3, there is now ChatGPT 4, there's going to be a ChatGPT 5 soon. Okay, so you see there are constant versions coming out. But let's go back to the shareholders agreement. I remember when then we raised more money and then we needed to make amendments to the shareholders agreement. Oh my God, I think I still wake up in a cold sweat about just like how awful going through the amendments was. So yes, theoretically, these agreements, they can get updated, but it is not a walk in the park. It is not something that you really want to do. So, main thing I want you to remember, lawyers focus on perfection because this is what you're trained to do. As a client, this is what I want from you because I want a watertight contract. Tech innovators are using the scientific method. On the tech side, we're constantly experimenting because we have an idea, we release it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, we scrap it, we move on to the next thing. So to you, to lawyers, tech people seem loosey-goosey and chaotic and all over the place. To the tech side, lawyers seem to be really perfectionist and also incredibly risk-averse, which you are, but also this is what we pay you for, okay? So both of these qualities are excellent if they are used in the correct domain. And this is where I especially see people struggle when they're in-house counsel. So as I said, I've advised lots of tech companies as well. And what I've noticed is that, as they become bigger, they professionalize, maybe they raise Series A, Series B, at some point they're going to need to get an in-house counsel. And at that point, when the lawyer joins maybe from a big law firm, that the tech startup, the tech company is going to seem really, really insane and really, really chaotic. But actually, it is not going to be chaotic. And by the way, in-house counsel experience this when they also join big tech firms. And there's absolutely no way that, Google or Amazon are chaotic. They're very, very successful companies. So clearly, if they are mad, there is a method to their madness. And I'm just explaining to you what that method is. We don't have time in this relatively short video to go into this right now, but essentially the more you understand how a tech product is made, the better you'll be able to understand your clients. But just for now, just understand that apps, algorithms, and sites are created in this constantly iterating way, and that there is a team of designers, developers, usually some sort of community managers, often data scientists and analysts working together to continue improving the product. And now let's move on to lesson 2. That's the next misunderstanding. And this is about how lawyers measure success versus how tech innovators measure success. This is going to be applicable for tech startups, for big tech, and for venture capital. And I'll tell you why understanding the success measurement is important for you. Because as a lawyer, we said you want to be a strategic advisor and not just somebody who literally knows the rules and just churns out legal templates. Like, that's not you. If that's what you wanted to do, you would not be watching this video to educate yourself, right? You want to be a lawyer whom clients are happy to pay a lot of money to because you're a great advisor to your clients. And some of the things that you will advise your clients on, they're like licensing agreements and commercial contracts and obviously corporate finance, like equity raises, like I just mentioned, and M&A. And for these things, you need to understand why a company is attractive. And that's why understanding how tech companies measure success is really, really important. This is one of the most important things I want you to know. So now let's do an experiment. Let's think like investors. So why do you think a company might be attractive? Is it because it has revenue growth? Yes, possibly. Investors are into revenue growth. What about profit growth? Yeah. I used to work in a private equity firm. We were really into profit growth. That was one of the things we were always focused on. What about if a business has a patent for something? Yeah, as investors we're really into that, like intellectual property. Totally, great. But okay, what about if a business has none of these things? Even if they have revenues like a trickle, so we're not going to count that, or maybe they have no revenue, so clearly they have no profit, and they don't have a patent, and actually what they're doing could be, copied by somebody else. Is that a good investment, a good acquisition? Well, sometimes it is, because do you remember when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion? Well, it literally didn't have any of those things. And it has been lauded as one of the smartest acquisitions of all time. Why is that? Well, I'm going to show you. So what I first started talking to you about, they are business metrics. So revenue growth has to do with money. Profit growth has to do with money. So anything to do with money, losing money rather, or gaining money, that is a business metric. And, an ice cream store or Google are going to use the same business metrics. Profit is profit wherever you are. But that's not the only thing that tech companies and venture capitalists measure, because money, revenue, is always a lagging indicator. So the thing that tech innovators of all sizes get really excited about are product metrics. And product metrics basically measure how much people love the product. So let's go back to Instagram. And one of the product metrics that they measure is time in app. So literally, how much time does an average user spend in the Instagram app? And you can extrapolate this to whatever social media you're using. So LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, and all of them. Anyway, so on and so forth. So if I were to tell you that, an average user spends an hour per day on Instagram, would that allow you to know how much money Instagram is making? No, it wouldn't. You might be able, to get all of their annual reports and to somehow do some Sherlock Holmes discovery work and figure it out. But no, because time is, that's not a money metric. And it's very possible for a product to have excellent product metrics and terrible business metrics. So, Instagram obviously makes loads and loads of money now, or Facebook, for Meta rather. And also, there are people sitting there in Instagram watching cat videos, like me, all the time. So obviously their business metrics and their product metrics are pretty high. Can you think of a company where there are really high product metrics, but it makes no money or makes very little money? Well, how about Wikipedia? So when you're researching something, you're going to spend a lot of time on Wikipedia. I know I have, so that means that time in app on Wikipedia for when a person gets there, it's going to be pretty high. But Wikipedia, it's a foundation, right? It's a charity. So literally when you go on there, they're asking you, I think, for like a $2 donation. So clearly not the same business metrics as Meta. So the reason why I want you to see this is that tech innovators and venture capitalists are constantly looking at product metrics and business metrics, and they are trying to essentially combine the two, and this is how they measure success. So this is probably not something that you would have really thought about unless you came to this tech software world, because most of the time this is not what happens inside companies. In general, A product metric measures how much people love the product. And what's kind of more confusing is that different products are going to have different metrics, right? Because, for example, I just talked to you about Instagram or any kind of social media, they want to keep you on. So, if you're on there for ages, that's really, really good for them. But let's think of Uber. Would Uber be really happy if you, as a rider, you're trying to hail a taxi and you ended up spending an hour in the Uber app? I mean, whenever I have spent ages in the actual Uber app, it hasn't been for good reasons, right? It's been because, the drivers keep on cancelling, or there's nobody there, or, it's not connecting, like it's not a good thing. So we can't use the same product metric for Uber. For Uber, it is going to be something else. So if this is getting you really confused, I totally understand. If this is getting you really confused, then obviously you need a little bit more Tech Non-Techies training, but more of that later. But what I would recommend that you do is when you are with a tech client, you are very unlikely to guess by yourself what their product metric is. The point I wanted you to get from this video is that to just understand that a product metric exists. And then you can ask them, just like literally ask them what their product metrics are. So you could say, what metrics are you watching in your core product? Or, you could keep it even more simple. How do you measure success in your core product? So literally just by asking these kinds of questions, you are showing yourself to be informed enough to essentially be in the room with a tech client or a venture capitalist. And you see, these questions like, how do you measure success in your core product? That's not a technical question. And the answer is probably not going to be a super technical answer. And you can ask for clarification, but this gives you enough confidence, this gives you enough information to start the conversation. So just to recap, we had these two concepts. So concept one is that lawyers, you are all trained to be perfectionists, and thank you very much. This is why we hire you, this is why we pay you, this is why we love you. Thank you. But this does not translate into the tech world, where in the tech world, we are much more about basically moving fast and breaking things. That's what Mark Zuckerberg was talking about. It's iterative, it's the scientific method. So that's concept one that we learned today. This is where the biggest misunderstandings arise. Then the second thing that we learned is that in the normal, the traditional world, everybody measures business metrics, and business metrics are always to do with money. In the tech world, obviously you measure business metrics because they are businesses, but you also measure product metrics. And product metrics are to do with how much people love using the product. So I hope that you found this lesson useful. And if you did, then obviously please follow this channel and like this video, leave me a lovely comment. I read all of them, so that will make me very happy. But if you did find this useful and you want more, well, there is more. Because my company, Tech Non-Techies, creates highly effective executive education programs, and we have some very elite clients amongst our roster. So we've worked with Oxford University's executive MBA program, also with the Blackstone Techstars Launchpad, not bad, and many other elite institutions. So if you would like a training session for your colleagues, then please get in touch and we would love to help you. The more you understand how your tech clients think, the more of them you will be able to get as your tech clients, and the better advice, the better relationships you will be able to have, so you can have long-term and lucrative relationships with these really, really interesting clients. And so you can also be at the forefront of innovation. So what's not to like? I have personally written for the Harvard Business Review and for the Financial Times about technology and innovation. So I am used to speaking to very high quality audiences, just like you. So get in touch. We would love to hear from you and discuss how we could help you work with some of the most interesting clients in the world. All of the details to get in touch with us are just below.